Okay, sorry this took me quite a while to get around to. Got sick during the winter time, into the new year, and then bada bing bada boom, Elgato capture card wasn't working, had to get another one, then I got the old one working, yada yada yada. Here we are, let's talk about Kecha Wacha equipment. So the reason why I'm talking about Kecha Wacha equipment is because I cannot record a 3DS anymore. I don't have a capture card on my 3DS. On top of that, I can't really play my 3DS in terms of playing Monster Hunter because too much playing Monster Hunter on my 3DS has caused the X button not to work. Which means I cannot capture footage for Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, which is a game I really, really love. Definitely my favorite in terms of the story in the series thus far, and it would be awesome to be able to show off some of the early monster equipment, since some of the early monsters in the 4th generation are super cool, but aren't accessible in low ranks in other games. So, I made a compromise. Kecha Wacha, Zamtrios, and Celtis Queen are all 4th generation newly introduced monsters in 4-use low rank, but are in the high rank, at the very least, in Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. So, I caught footage in Gen U of me with that equipment by spending time grinding up those monsters. I've skipped Nacilla because at the time, I was under the impression that Nacilla is going to be in Wilds, and so far, based on the footage that we've gotten, that seems to be true, so I'm hoping she's going to be in low rank. Let's hope. That will be so freaking cool. We're 2 weeks away, baby, at the time of recording. Okay, so, Kecha Wacha equipment. Let's start off with that armor. Right off the bat, the thing that really stands out the most to me when it comes to this armor set is the colors. Kecha Wacha itself is a very orange and yellow based creature. I mostly think of it as orange. So that's a big part of the color scheme. There are these green accents added to it that I think are pretty effective. I'm not usually big on orange and yellow as main staple colors, or I guess I should say primarily used colors in a design, but there are exceptions, and this one is actually one of them. One of the pieces I think that's really neat, particularly on the masculine set, is the hood. I think the hood is a fantastic idea. It's a shame you can't actually put it on. It'd be really neat, possibly even cute to see what it's like. But a stellar armor set. It's got a certain simplicity to it, but a nice bit of a style. I don't have footage of me with the feminine set, but I have it in my second file of 4U, and I do remember that it has this big ribbon on the waist that has like these, because it's like tied, it has like the streams stick out, so they kind of flow behind the character, as well as the head has these earpieces that really are long and extended and stream as well. Something that has like a bit of a extended cloth cape, these ribbons or scarves that just drape off of a character's armor, I think are really great aesthetic choices, so I'm a really big fan of the feminine set because of that. As such, while it's not an absolute personal favorite, I think it's still a good enough set to get an A. I would give it an A. Moving on, let's talk about the Palico equipment, which is not as strong in my opinion. There are certain things about it that are quite adorable though. First off, we have another color scheme idea. The two things that I really, really like about this armor set is A, the helmet. The big Kecha Wacha ears on the side are really cute. There's some nice, adorable little patterns, particularly like these, I guess you could say tribal-esque paw prints and aesthetics on the armor sets that I think are really neat and catching. And I really like the green, like sack that goes around the cat's back. The thing I'm not that big on is the weapon. It's certainly distinct and unique, but I don't really understand what specifically it is, and as such, it just doesn't stand out to me. I guess it's cool that it is a unique thing in comparison to just taking a hunter weapon and shrinking it like certain other armor sets do, but this one is just kind of more of a C, in my opinion. Okay, now on to the weapons themselves. First up, let's take a look at gun lance. I've said this before, I'm usually not a big fan of gun lances. They are a usually middling weapon for me, but Kecha Wacha's I think is really solid. For one, that shield is gorgeous. It has more of these, again, very distinct patterns put onto the shield. It has certain pieces that kind of extend off the shield. It's a fairly good large sized shield as well. I think the use of like having fur wrapped around the weapon with this very distinct spike at the end is quite awesome and neat. I like how the bladed part is more hooked, much like that of the Kecha Wacha's fingers itself, that it uses quite a lot in combat. And kind of like the Lagombi gun lance, one of my favorite parts is when you use the Wyvern Fire and the weapon is in cooldown, 2 little Kecha Wacha ear pieces stick up that even had covered these patches that look a lot like Kecha Wacha eyes. Really great attention to detail with this weapon. Very solid, very awesome. Up next, we have the Switch Axe, another weapon that I tend to not be a huge fan of its designs, and this is kind of one of them. It's okay. It definitely has that distinct Kecha aspect to it. The blades, in terms of both the axe and the sword, very much a reminiscent of the claw. You have that big ear pattern with the spikes. There's some uniqueness to it, but it's just kind of a bland Switch Axe in my opinion. Moving on to a more unique weapon, we have the longsword. This one's a very distinct design. It's more of like a pole arm to a certain extent. There's a hooked end, much like many of these other weapons, with the ear pattern and all these tufts of fur. But what makes it kind of more distinct is, again, it's more of a pole arm versus just a straight bladed like katana or claymore like some of the other longsword weapon designs are. So because of that uniqueness, I have a pretty favorable feeling towards it. It's a neat one. Then we have Greatsword, typically a pretty solid weapon, and yeah, this is a really good Greatsword. It's simple, but this is simplicity that really works in my opinion. I like the patterns and design and the use of fur at the handle and hilt, and how the blade kind of 2 blades actually crisscross each other that both represent, again, Kecha Wacha's claws, I think are very effective. This is a really, really solid weapon. Absolute aces. Here is the personal favorite of mine, Hunting Horn. So hunting horns are always great. This one is stellar. It's my favorite of the Kecha Wacha weapons. I'm not usually a big fan of those monkeys with the tambourines, but this aping off of that concept and making it actually very cute, I think is super effective. Really neat. The creature use is cute, and it has a nice sounds to it. They're not the most pleasant sounds, I will say. Surprisingly, there are monsters that are much bigger, that have a lot more sweeter tunes that play as comparison to Kecha Wacha's, but still a very solid weapon. I like this one a lot. Up next, we have the Insect Glaive. This one is another one I really like, and its simplicity is extremely effective here. It's just a staff that has very much this wooden aspect to it, with some of that Kecha Wacha fur coloration at the center, which seems super simple, but there are 2 things that I think are very effective. The golden accents around the ends of the weapon are really cool and unique. The part that usually changes form for when you're getting ready to shoot your Kinsect or to do a pole vault is just a simple pole, but it just seems to work very well for me. It'll change its color depending on the Kinsect you have on it. But I think the most effective part is, I think it's fair to say that Rajang is the monster with the most Sun Wukong based inspiration for its design. But this weapon makes me think very much of the staff that is mostly associated with the Sun Wukong. And so seeing it extend as you use the weapon itself is kind of a really neat idea. It's a simple one, but effective. Very, very effective in what it's trying to do. So I love it. And then lastly, we have Lance. The shield on this one, to me, is not as great as gun lances, but it's still a pretty good design. You can clearly tell that it's reminiscent of the ear of a Kecha Wacha, which is cool. I'll give it credit for that. The lance itself has a bit more of a bone aesthetic, I would personally say, at least from my viewing, with the extra spikes and the typical Kecha Wacha design around the hilt, or the handle of where you hold the lance. Certainly a good one, not an amazing weapon design for me, like a super standout one. Not one of Kecha's weapons that immediately comes to my mind, but it's still a pretty good lance. So overall, I would give the weapons a solid B. There were some really good ones in there, but there are a few kind of duds, and while I do like them, they're not the weapons I usually go for the most. But yeah, that's Kecha Wacha equipment. Join me next time, where we'll probably be speaking about Zamtrios. And like I said, at time of recording, we are 2 weeks away from Monster Hunter Wilds, and I am very hyped. I cannot wait. Oof, this is going to be fantastic. And hey, there's some other things from Capcom that I'm actually looking forward to as well, such as Onimusha 2 being released on modern day consoles, and the new Onimusha game in of itself. It looks neat. I'm pretty excited, honestly. So yeah, hopefully you all have had a good end of the year, and catch you all next time. Happy hunting.